hope you can find it in your hearts to understand.
Every family has its secrets, its hidden messages, and its unfinished goodbyes. But what happens when that family is the most famous in the world? And the secret is a mother's final words to her future king, words he was never meant to hear. This is the story of a lost letter, a heartbreaking prophecy, and a promise from a princess silenced too soon, who desperately wanted her voice to be heard. It began not with a whisper, but with a premonition. On January 12, 1997, Princess Diana sat down alone at her desk in Kensington Palace. The world saw a glamorous icon, but in that moment, she was simply a mother haunted by a feeling she couldn't shake. She was about to pen a message for her son's 21st birthday, a birthday she knew, in her soul, she would never see. To understand the power of her words, you have to understand her world at that exact moment. 1997, Diana was finally free. Free from a fractured fairy tale marriage. Free from the strict, often suffocating protocols of the palace. But with that freedom came a terrifying vulnerability. She was the most famous woman on the planet, navigating life alone under a microscope. She was forging a new identity, a global humanitarian, a single mother, and a woman fiercely determined to protect her sons from the pressures that had shattered her own life. This letter wasn't just a birthday card. It was a life raft, a piece of her soul she was sending into the future, hoping it would reach her boy when he needed it most. So, how does a mother's most private message to her son vanish for years? The answer lies with one man, a man who was far more than a servant. He was her confidant, her most loyal protector in a world of enemies. His name, Paul Burrell, the devoted butler of Princess Diana. After her tragic death, while the world mourned and the princess grappled with an unimaginable loss, it was Burrell who quietly, secretly, began to safeguard her most intimate possessions. He called it his duty, but to others, it looked like something very different. He believed he was preserving her legacy. The palace believed he was stealing their secrets. And tucked away among her personal effects was a sealed envelope addressed to a future king, a letter that would become the most contested piece of paper in modern royal history. The tension between the quiet butler and the mighty House of Windsor simmered for years, and then it exploded. In 2001, Paul Burrell was arrested. The charge? Theft of hundreds of Princess Diana's personal items. The palace presented him not as a loyal servant, but as a common criminal. The trial was a media circus, but then something unbelievable happened. Just as the case was poised to destroy him, it collapsed overnight. Why? Because a power far greater than the courts intervened. The revelation was shocking. Queen Elizabeth II herself had personally stepped in. She allegedly remembered a conversation where Burrell had told her he was taking items for safekeeping. This wasn't theft. This was, in her reported words, an understanding. The case was dropped, but the war for Diana's legacy was just beginning, and the letter was still out there. With the trial over, the world thought the drama had ended. But Paul Burrell knew something they didn't. He wasn't just protecting china and dresses. He was guarding a secret locked away in a safe. A mother's last words to her son. For years, he held on to this devastatingly personal artifact. Why? He would later claim it was out of respect, out of a promise he made. But the pressure was building. The palace was silent, but watchful. The public was hungry for answers. And then, in 2003, the year Prince William turned 21, Burrell made a decision that would send shockwaves through the entire world. He decided to tell his story, all of it. The world held its breath in 2003 as Paul Burrell's book, a royal duty hit the shelves. It wasn't just a memoir, it was a detonation, and at its heart was the bombshell revelation of the letter's existence. The media went into a frenzy. Headlines screamed around the globe. For the first time, the public learned that Diana's love and her fears had been captured on paper, a message in a bottle thrown into the turbulent sea of the future. But what did it actually say? Burrell teased the world with fragments, each more heartbreaking than the last. He spoke of her loneliness, her hopes for her sons, and a cryptic warning that sent conspiracy theorists into overdrive. The palace was thrown into a state of silent panic. This was their worst nightmare. Diana's most private voice, echoing from the grave, was about to rewrite her story and theirs. So, what was in that letter? The words, once read, change everything. Diana didn't just write about love, she wrote about survival. She confessed to William her deepest fears about the institution he was born into. She warned him of the dark forces within the establishment, the same forces she believed had conspired against her. She begged him to remember that duty should never come at the cost of happiness. But the most chilling part, her almost psychic premonition. She wrote that she feared her life would be cut short in some way, that she wouldn't be there to guide him. It wasn't just a letter, it was a warning, a prophecy, and a heartbreaking acknowledgement that she knew her time with them was running out. Imagine for a moment being Prince William. You lose your mother in the most public and tragic way imaginable. You grieve in the global spotlight, and then years later, as you're finally trying to heal, her most private and painful thoughts are splashed across the front pages of every newspaper on Earth. Not delivered to you in private, but sold to the world. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. The letter was meant for him, and him alone. Sources close to the prince revealed he was, understandably, devastated and furious. He felt a profound betrayal. This was the ultimate violation of his mother's memory and his own private grief. The palace walls, designed to protect, had failed, and a servant's duty had turned into a son's deepest wound. Time heals, but legacy is eternal. Today, we can look at Prince William, the future King of England, and see the living embodiment of his mother's most desperate hopes. He is not a prince locked in a cold palace. He is a hands-on father, photographed carrying his own children, laughing with them in the park, a radical act of normalcy that Diana herself would have championed. He married for love, choosing a strong, independent woman much like his mother. He speaks openly about mental health, shattering the royal stigma she so despised. In every choice he makes, we see a silent answer to that lost letter, a promise fulfilled. He is living the life she dreamed for him. The letter was a tragedy, but his life is her ultimate vindication. But this story has another heartbreaking layer, a layer often overlooked. What about the other son? What about Harry? The letter was addressed to William, the future king. But Diana was a mother to 2 boys. Was there a message for Harry? Historians and biographers have long debated this. Some believe the letter was meant for William in his specific role as heir. Others whisper that it was a devastating oversight, a silent wound for the spare. Imagine being Harry. Not only do you lose your mother, but her most profound final words are revealed to be for your brother, and then sold to the global media. This single document may have unknowingly deepened the chasm between the 2 brothers, adding a layer of personal anguish to the very public rift we see today. It wasn't just a letter. It was a ghost at their family table. While the world dissected Diana's words, behind the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace, a silent war raged. The institution's worst fear had materialized. Diana's voice, powerful and unchecked, was shaping her narrative from beyond the grave. Officially, the palace maintained a stoic silence, refusing to comment on private matters. But unofficially, sources described a state of controlled fury. This was a direct challenge to their authority and their carefully crafted control over the royal image. Their weapon of choice? Not public statements, but private pressure, leveraging influence with media allies to downplay the letter's significance and reinforcing the narrative of Paul Burrell as an unreliable traitor. Their goal wasn't to deny the letter, but to contain its emotional blast radius. The battle wasn't fought in headlines. It was fought in whispers. So why did he do it? Why did Paul Burrell, the self-proclaimed loyal servant, ultimately betray Diana's deepest secret? The answer is as complex as the man himself. In his mind, he wasn't a villain. He was a martyr. He claimed a higher duty to Diana's memory than to the palace's silence. He saw himself as the guardian of her truth, the one person who could ensure her voice wasn't erased by the institution she feared. Was it love? Obsession? Or a calculated play for fortune and fame, disguised as devotion? The truth likely lies somewhere in the shadows between them all. He forced the world to remember her, not as a passive princess, but as a woman who saw the darkness coming. And for that, he was both condemned and vindicated. So, where is the letter now? Its physical form remains one of the royal family's most closely guarded secrets. Some believe it was quietly returned to William, locked away in a private vault. Others speculate it remains under the protection of the royal archives, a document too explosive to ever see the light of day again. But its true legacy isn't on paper, it's in the man Prince William became. A father who prioritizes hugs over handshakes. A future king who speaks openly about grief and mental health. In him, Diana's words found their living vessel. Her hope became his blueprint. The letter faded, but its message didn't. It's echoed in every break from tradition he makes, in every smile he shares with his children. Diana's voice wasn't lost, it was inherited. Despite everything we know, the mystery persists. Why did Diana choose to put these specific fears and warnings on paper? Was it a mother's intuition? Or did she have concrete reasons to believe her life was in danger? Why address it only to William and not to Harry? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if the letter had reached William privately, as she intended, would it have changed the course of his relationship with his brother or with the crown? Some truths are buried too deep to ever fully uncover. This letter remains a ghost, a whisper of love, a shadow of fear, and a permanent part of Diana's enigmatic legacy. Why does this single letter, decades later, still captivate millions? Because Diana's story is a global mirror. It reflects universal themes, a mother's love, a struggle against invisible forces, and a cry for authenticity in a world of rules. Her words resonate with anyone who has ever felt powerless, misunderstood, or fiercely protective of their family. This isn't just royal history, it's human drama. The letter symbolizes the hope that truth, no matter how buried, will eventually surface, and that love, especially a mother's, never truly dies. Royal biographer and historian, Dr. Emily Carter, weighs in on the letter's significance. This isn't merely a personal note, she states. It's a political document. Diana understood the power of narrative. By writing this, she ensured that her version of events, her fears, her struggles within the system would not die with her. It was a strategic and deeply personal act of self-preservation. This perspective shifts the lens. The letter becomes more than a farewell. It's a calculated effort to shape her legacy and protect her sons from the pressures she endured. Historians have long debated the letter's impact on the relationship between William and Harry. While addressed solely to William, its contents undeniably shaped Harry's worldview too. Some suggest it created an unspoken hierarchy of grief, with William bearing the weight of their mother's direct words. Others argue it became a silent burden. Both brothers shared a painful reminder of a future she would never see. The letter, though meant to guide, may have inadvertently cast a long shadow over the delicate bond between the two princes, a bond already tested by tragedy and duty. Today, Diana's letter feels eerily prescient. In an era where mental health is openly discussed and traditional institutions are questioned, her words resonate stronger than ever. She advocated for breaking cycles of silence, a message that aligns perfectly with modern movements toward authenticity and emotional honesty. The letter isn't just a relic, it's a mirror held up to today's societal shifts, proving that her struggle for transparency and humanity remains painfully relevant. Beyond personal drama, Diana's letter forced a reluctant institution into a new era of visibility. It exposed the stark contrast between cold tradition and modern emotional vulnerability. The monarchy could no longer fully hide behind closed doors. The public now demanded glimpses of authenticity, first from Diana and now from her sons. This letter, perhaps unintentionally, became a catalyst for the royal family's slow, ongoing evolution, pushing it toward transparency, whether it was ready or not. The Crown's response wasn't just about a letter. It was about defending a centuries-old system against a single woman's undeniable truth. The greatest testament to Diana's letter lies not in words, but in actions. Look at William and Harry's choices. William's dedication to mental health advocacy through Heads Together, directly confronting the stigma Diana faced. Harry's creation of the Invictus Games, championing those overlooked by society, much like his mother did. Though their paths diverged, both sons embody her legacy of compassion over protocol. They didn't need to publish a response. They built living monuments to her values. The letter's true power? It became their invisible compass, guiding them to heal the very wounds she revealed. But let's not forget the role of the media, the very force Diana warned William about. The paparazzi hounded her in life, and in death, they devoured her private words. This letter didn't just leak. It was fed into the engine of global sensationalism. The same outlets that chased her car that night in Paris now profit from her most intimate fears, blurring the line between news and exploitation. This isn't the first time a private royal document shook the world. History is dotted with them secret treaties, abdication letters, love notes that changed empires. But Diana's stands apart. It's not a document of state. It's a mother's cry. It belongs to a new era where the human story behind the crown becomes more powerful than the crown itself. Diana's letter forces us to ask a painful question. Do we ever truly own our own story, especially if we live our lives in the public eye? Where is the line between historical interest and a fundamental right to privacy, even for a princess? This letter is the ultimate test case, a ghost that continues to haunt our conversation about fame, morality, and who gets to control the narrative of a life. Despite the pain, the betrayal, and the unanswered questions, Diana's letter carries an undeniable thread of hope. It's a mother's fierce love, frozen in time. It's her belief that her son would not just be a king, but a good man. In a way, the letter's journey from secret to sensation to legacy mirrors Diana's own, chaotic, exposed, but ultimately transformative. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we leave behind echoes of ourselves. And sometimes, those echoes become a guiding light for those we love most. Beyond the headlines, Diana's letter sparked a silent legal revolution. It forced courts and publishers to grapple with a new question. Can the dead truly be defamed? Do their private thoughts become public property upon death, especially if they're royal? This case quietly set precedents about posthumous privacy rights, influencing how the estates of other famous figures protect their legacies. The battle over this letter wasn't just about a mother's words, it was about redefining who owns a story after its author is gone. Diana's letter didn't just shape her sons, it forced the entire monarchy to rethink its strategy. Before Diana, royalty was distant, enigmatic, shielded by protocol. Her willingness to be vulnerable, to share her pain publicly echoed in this letter changed everything. Today's carefully curated transparency, William and Kate sharing mental health struggles, Harry speaking about therapy. Even the Queen's rare personal addresses during the pandemic, all are indirect heirs to Diana's radical honesty. The palace learned from her that to survive, they must sometimes show a human heart beneath the crown. Her letter was the unwitting blueprint for the modern, relatable monarchy. In the end, a letter is just ink on paper, but this letter became something more. It became a voice that refused to be silenced, a mother's love that refused to be forgotten. It's a reminder that the most powerful legacies are not made of gold or crowns, but of truth and vulnerability. Diana's words, meant for one boy, ended up touching millions. They changed a family, challenged an institution, and forever altered how we see royalty and ourselves. The letter is lost to time, but its echo, her echo, is eternal.